Yes, them my name.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's meeting. We'll be starting just in a minute. This program is being held in 3 languages. So we have French, we have English, and then we have Portuguese. You can access or enable the various languages just beneath the Zoom. So you check at the bottom of the Zoom, you just click on the interpretation button. You see the different languages available, then you can enable which one you are comfortable with. In a minute, we'll be starting this meeting. Thank you very much. Once again, if you want to access any of the 3 languages that we are using, you can click on the button down your Zoom where you can see interpretation. So you click on interpretation, you get you select which one you are comfortable with, whether English, French, or Portuguese. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are joining us from. We are happy to welcome you to join us in this conversation on how parliaments in Africa are faring. We are going to discuss all these issues when it comes to becoming transparent, especially involving citizens in the work they do and providing opportunities for people to hold them accountable. Today's meeting, we are holding it on the theme, the Africa Open Parliament Index 2022, assessing the impacts, sharing the lessons, and identifying the challenges. Exactly a year ago, June 2022, the maiden Africa Open Parliament Index report launched by the Africa PMOs Network, the Africa Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network, APMON. In this maiden report, 13 national parliaments were assessed across West Africa. So since the launch of the OPI report, Parliamentary Network Africa, PN Africa, with support from the National Endowment for Democracy, has supported selected national level PMO networks who are supposed to work closely with their parliaments to create reforms and support the parliament to implement some of the recommendations or some of the issues that were identified in the OPI reports. So after all these actions have been taken, today we want to know or have an understanding of what the situation has been after the launch of the reports. And so the bigger question for us today to answer is what has changed after the OPI report or the OPI index report was launched. I'm sure you're also aware that today marks the International Day of Parliamentarism, a day that is going to be commemorated all over the world to review the progress that parliaments have made in achieving some key goals to be more representative and move with the times, including carrying out self-assessments, working to include more women and young MPs, and adapting new technologies. This even makes today's event a very important one. It gives us a good opportunity to also know what parliaments in Africa are doing to improve their systems, of course, including their procedures and how they are increasing transparency, how they are involving citizens in the work that they are doing, and how they are promoting accountability to the people. And so, ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's meeting. We look forward to having your contributions and comments. My name is Benjamin Opokwaye. I'm with the Parliamentary Network Africa as a Senior Programs Officer, and I'll be mastering today's event. Thank you very much. Once again, welcome. At this point, we would like to hear from you. We want to get to know where you are joining in from. And so we are going to put a link in the chat box. So you'd have a Mentimeter link that will be shared in the chat box. You'd have an accompanying passcode. You would copy the passcode, click on the link, click on the Mentimeter link. It will send you to a Mentimeter platform or portal where you can input passcode and you'll be able to answer a simple question for us to know where you are joining us from, which country you are joining us from in this meeting. Please kindly check your chat box and let's hear from you, or let's see from you where you are joining us from. So a Mentimeter link would be shared in the chat box. In addition to that, you'd have a passcode which will be shared. You copy the passcode, you click on the Mentimeter link to take you to a portal or a website where you'd be able to access and then input the passcode. And then you get some question pop up for you to answer and tell us where you are joining us from which country you are joining today's meeting from. We can do this in a minute.
Yeah.
So just to take it again, at this point, we want to hear from you. We want to know where you are joining us from, which country you're joining us from. So a Mentimeter link has been shared in the chat box. You can access that together with a passcode, which has also been shared. So you copy the passcode and then you click on the link. It will take you to a Mentimeter platform or portal where you can input the passcode. After inputting the passcode, you would have a question that is asking you to tell us where you are joining us from, which country you are joining today's meeting from.
Hello, everyone.
The technical team is on standby to let us know where our partners are joining in from. And again, just to reiterate, okay. All right, thank you very much for joining us from Guinea-Bissau, Togo, Argentina, United States, Morocco, Canada, Benin, Brazil. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. So whilst you are inputting your country where you are joining us from, I would like to reiterate that this event is being held in 3 languages. And so you just have to check the bottom of your Zoom. You'd see an interpretation button over there. You click on it. It will give you a list of the languages that we are having this event in. You have English, you have French, and then you have Portuguese. You can click any of them, any of the 3 that you are comfortable with, and you would listen in. Thank you very much. At this point, we would like to seed. Thank you all for letting us know where you are joining in from. Thank you very much. So we'd like to take some remarks. In this journey, we've had a lot of partners who have helped us, who have supported us in this journey. And so we'd like to hear from them. We'd like to hear from some of them. We'll take Caroline Gaita. Madam Caroline Gaita is the chairperson of the Africa Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network, APMON. She's the chairperson of the working group and also the executive director of Mzalendo Trust Kenya. She's an accomplished strategic leadership and governance specialist. She is a communications and public relations practitioner and very capable of nonprofit directions. And she has over 15 years of experience working with both states and non-state entities. Caroline, if you can hear me, please, can we take your remarks?
Hi. Okay, hi Ben. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, excellent. Greetings from Nairobi, Kenya, and East Africa as a whole. I see that we are heavily West Africa represented, and so I hope that the interpretation services will be clear for everybody. I'm really delighted to join our partners, PN Africa, and other PMOs from across the continent as we mark this year's day of Parliament Day. It's a reminder of the steps that we continue to take, not just as parliaments, but also as civil society organizations working in the parliamentary space. So I come here on behalf of Mzalendo Trust and also on behalf of the network that Ben has spoken about. Mzalendo works to promote open, inclusive, and accountable parliaments. And so we are really at home as we are having this conversation. So 1 year ago, we met in Accra, Ghana, and we had conversations with partners here represented in this meeting here and asked ourselves what it would look like if parliaments across the continent were really open, were really accountable to their citizens, and what are some of the tools that would allow us to measure this openness and accountability and transparency. And I'm really pleased that PN Africa had already started on that journey and has been able to take the journey. And so I'm looking forward to hear what the reflections are. We also thought that by building a strong community of actors across parliaments, it would help us also push for responsive parliaments that respond to emerging issues. And we note from today's theme, Parliaments for Planet, that there are really a lot of issues that are emerging, not least relating to inequalities that is made worse by climate issues, but also in terms of providing resources, providing legislative frameworks that is necessary to combat some of these issues that we are facing. So as we join as PN Africa here today to reflect on what the year has looked like, on what the findings have been, and what some of the interventions that have perhaps been put in place since the index was released last year. We're also looking forward to learning how we can adopt the best practices that will be shared in this meeting to ensure that this is a practice that is entrenched within the continent, and that civil society organizations and parliamentary monitoring organizations generally can work together with their local parliaments to advance openness and accountability, and therefore ensure that citizens are really benefiting and gaining from the aspects of open parliaments. From the presentation here today, I also hope that we will get insights on how technology is helping to advance the issue of legislative openness, and how membership and participation within the open government framework upon which open parliaments are also anchored is really advancing transparency, participation, access, accountability from the parliaments across the continent. So on behalf of Mzalendo Trust is to really reiterate our commitment to this process. We do hope that this is a process that will cascade towards downwards to the rest of the continent. We also hope that it is an exercise that will be taken up by parliaments, not as a tool that spotlights what they are doing right or wrong, but as a tool that helps us work together for the common good of our citizens generally. I also wish to take this opportunity to invite the parliamentary monitoring networks from across the continent to really come together as networks and to join the African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network, because this then will provide you with an opportunity where you can learn, you can share your experiences, you can exchange ideas, you can access resources that are being developed, not just by us as partners from the continent, but as you will note from the presentations that are lined up from other partners from across the globe. As I conclude, I want to thank Sami and his team, but also take this opportunity to thank Maria, who is on the call, for the support that she gave us as ACMO. As we started this conversation last year in Accra, and we have continued with the conversation, and look forward to working together with everybody on the call and those not on the call to advance this agenda that we have started. And I hope that when we meet again on June 30th next year, I'm not saying we won't meet in between, we'll be seeing not just the progress that has been made, but also looking at the broader adoption of the index from across the continent. As an institution, we've done baseline assessment for the East African continent, and so we are looking forward to partnering with PN Africa to roll out a broad assessment in 2024. And we look forward to sharing with you those findings once we do that next year. With those few remarks, it's to welcome you all, wish you fruitful deliberations, and pray that we will continue working together. We'll continue strengthening this community of practice from Africa. We'll continue partnering with our friends from across the globe, and ultimately that our colleagues in civil society, our citizens in our respective countries, and our parliaments will benefit immensely from the work that we do. I thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for the remarks. Indeed, we are looking forward to joining hands and learning from each other as a network. While doing this, we've had immense support from the National Endowments for Democracy. And so Dave Peterson is the Senior Director of the Africa Program of the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. NED is a publicly funded grant-making organization in Washington, D.C. So since 1988, Dave has been responsible for NED's program to identify and assist hundreds of African NGOs and activists working for democracy, human rights, free press, justice, and peace. This morning, or in this event, we are very happy to have Dave share with us some remarks. Dave, if you can hear me, shall we take your remarks, please?
Thank you very much, Ben, and greetings to Caroline and to Sammy and all the other participants in this event today. I'm just very honored to be able to participate, and very proud that the endowment has been able to support the parliamentary network and some of the other initiatives in Africa, such as Mzalendo Trust. I think the work that you've done has been really pioneering in terms of building democratic institutions on the continent. Just over the last few years, to see how the parliamentary network has grown and developed. I remember the conversations we were having, during the depths of the pandemic, when this initiative really took off, and it's just so satisfying to see that you are growing, and I'm also very interested in hearing about the index, when learning about the impact that you've actually had. Congratulations on this. We will look forward to continuing our partnership, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dave, for the remarks. I'm always grateful for the support from NED. Again, while Caroline was speaking, she mentioned Directorio Legislativo, who has also been very instrumental in supporting us throughout the development of the index. So Maria Baron is the Global Executive Director for Directorio Legislativo. She's also a former co-chair of the Open Government Partnership. Again, Maria and organization have been very, very instrumental throughout the process of developing the Open Parliament Index, with their over a decade of experience in doing same in Latin America. Today, we are happy to have Maria also share with us some few remarks. Maria, if you can hear me, please, shall we take your remarks?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for the invitation to be able to give a very short perspective from our part of the world. As you mentioned, and Caroline as well, we have been collaborating for some time now, I think maybe 2 years, a little bit more, starting in the pandemic, and sharing the experience that we've had in Latin America with the first the launch of the Latin American Network for Legislative Transparency, and then how we built the Latin American Legislative Transparency Index. And I'm very, very happy to see that since the inception of this idea, you have spearheaded together with Caroline this sort of dream that we had at the margins of the pandemic up until today. So you put together a really strong network. We had the opportunity also to go to Africa to launch it. And also it's 1 year since you've implemented the index with similar but your own methodology. So I'm very, very happy that this initiative and the stream saw the day of light. I'm very, and I have a lot of expectations, because right now, as we speak, in Latin America, we're measuring the 6th round of the Latin American Index. And this means that for us, so we started off in 2012, and we measured it in 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018. In 20, we stopped because of the pandemic, and we measured it in 2021, and today in 2023. So that's 6 measurements, and it's a little bit more than 10 years. So that gives us a lot of data, a lot of ways to see how our parliaments respond, not only to the index, but we can also see behind the data, and we can see which are the parties that advance more on transparency, and the ones that not so much, or what years, or what are the initiatives that we do that they are more receptive to. But I can say today that with the index and with the network behind and well established in Latin America, that we can have sort of 2 sides of the same coin. One, which we hadn't thought of before, is the strong collaboration that we have between organizations. And it's not only that the organizations of the network are interested in their own country, but they're interested in the whole region. And so if something happens in Peru, we're all there to help the organizations that are in Peru. If something happens in the Dominican Republic as well. So I think it's a really strong network to collaborate against the today democratic backlash that we're living, and I'm sure you're having that same experience in Africa as well. And also the evolution between each country. So in not only the measurement that we see as a general region, but also the ups and downs that each country can live throughout these 10 years. And that's really interesting to see, and to sort of help us to elaborate better strategies. And so I'm here very happy, and I have a lot of expectations to what we can discuss today, and to hear the interesting discussions that we'll have right now. And I think that as from now, we can think together on more collaboration and a lot of comparison from the data that you have and that you will have, and see what are the matches and what are the differences that we have as 2 different parts of the world. We can do a lot of peer exchange, not only organizations, but also with MPs. And I think that could be really, really interesting, because in Latin America, we already have those MPs that have already been evangelized in these issues. And I'm sure you have those in West Africa as well. And also, I think we can choose and select issues that are of interest in both regions, and think together how to address them. One last thing before leaving you, it's very interesting this right moment in Latin America, because we are at the margins of starting a review of, like a formal review of what we have done. And I think that will allow us a lot of data as well, and we can share it with you so that you don't go through the same mistakes that we have in the past. So I think that could be interesting as well. So thank you a lot. Thanks, Sami, for always being the spearhead, the arrow that allows us to open new pathways. Ben, and untiring collaboration from you. It's very, very interesting and very inspiring. And Caroline, of course, your wisdom and your knowledge is a lot of help in this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the kind words. Indeed, there are lots of expectations, and we are hoping that in the future, going forward, we'll have more collaborations. Finally, we are going to take the remark from Mr. Tariq Nesnash. Tariq Nesnash is the Senior Regional Coordinator of Africa and the Middle East for the Open Government Partnership, fronting and advocating a lot for OGP in Africa. Mr. Tariq Nesnash, if you can hear me, please give us your remarks.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for this opportunity, really, to participate in this event. I'd like to start by a basic fundamental information from the OGP perspective. Open governments cannot be realized without parliaments. And throughout OGP's history, like positive action as well as like negative actions of the parliaments have had significant impact on enabling the environments of open governments. And there are today a number of like landmark reforms that can only be delivered, and that's only delivered thanks to the parliaments. We can state like examples of the right to information, beneficial ownership, whistleblower protection, and others. And here I'd like to remind all of us of like 4 areas where parliament's engagements are much needed in the open gov space. First, it just like taking legislative action where parliaments can champion open gov values by introducing, reviewing, and ratifying legislation relevant to open governments. As of 2020, approximately 10 to 15% of all OGP commitments required legislative action. Second, parliamentary oversight. Parliaments can hold the executive accountable for open government reforms and opening up their own oversight processes to public scrutiny. Third, opening up parliamentary processes. Parliaments can adopt open governance principles like transparency, accountability, participation, inclusion in their own parliamentary institution and processes, and have their own open parliaments action plans. And fourth, creating space for dialogue, where parliaments can foster dialogue, cross-party dialogue and support to advance and institutionalize open government reports. Today, open parliament commitments are really growing in the OGP, where many parliaments are co-creating their own commitments and own action plans. Moving forward, OGP recently has adopted the new strategy, the 2023-2028 strategy. And one of the main pillars of this strategy is to make open governments central on how all levels and all branches of government function and deliver on their priorities. And of course here, parliaments can and hopefully play a key role in this strategy. And we really think that the tools like the index we are presenting today can be key to identify our biggest challenges and find a way to coordinate among ourselves toward these common objectives. I would like to share that OGP platform is ready to help with this mission, whether it is the articulation with national action plans or even co-creating OGP parliamentary action plans. We invite you to use OGP as a platform for this transformation and for action. And please not only use OGP support units, but the wide network of partners, assemblies, civil society organizations that are here to support each other in this process. I would like to conclude by sharing two coming events. Next month in July 20th, there will be the Conference of Open Governments in Francophone Africa that will be organized in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. And one of the important discussions will be around open parliaments in the region. Another important event for this discussion is the Global OGP Summit planned in September 7th in Tallinn, Estonia. And we really hope to continue pushing the open parliament agenda worldwide. Finally, thank you very much for your engagements. I'm really happy to continue collaboration with all of you.
Thank you very much also, Tariq. We are very happy to also continue the engagement, and thank you very much for giving us heads up on the upcoming events of the OGP. And thank you all for our guest speakers who have shared their remarks with us. We are always grateful. We would like to move on with the discussion. And so now we want to have an understanding of what some of the previous actions have been when it comes to the Open Parliament Index. So just to have some background, what has been some of the stories during the process of developing this tool, and even what are we looking at for the next index that we are supposed to develop in 2024. And to do this, we are going to have Mr. Sami Obeng. Sami Obeng is the Executive Director for Parliamentary Network Africa. He's also the Head of Secretariat for the Africa Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network, APMON. Sami, if you can hear me, kindly.
Thank you so much, Ben, and good day to all of you from wherever it is that you have joined us today. It's such a great pleasure to be seeing tens of you, in today's meeting. Prior to the meeting, we had registrations, well over 150 participants registering for today's event. And I can already see that we are hitting about 100 of you joining us from all around the world. And of course, let me extend the sincerest gratitude from us here at Parliamentary Network Africa and the Secretariat of the Africa Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network. Extend our sincerest gratitude to our friends, Caroline, to Dave, to Maria, and to Tariq, who have joined us from very different places across the world to have this conversation today. And here from Accra, my mission is very simple, essentially to refresh our memories on what the Open Parliament Index 2022 was like, and also to give us an indication of what awaits us even as we prepare for the index next year. And so without much ado, I will go ahead to share just a few slides just to serve as a reminder of all of us on where we have come from. This is a poster just to remind us that on the 20th of July last year, the maiden Africa Open Parliament Index was launched in Accra. And we're all very excited to see that our continent has been able to replicate this very innovative idea, which principally, like Maria had indicated, started in the Latin American region. And we are able to also, have an Open Parliament Index. In this index that was launched last year, the focus was on West Africa. And so here we have the African map that shows all the countries in Africa, but the green area shows the countries in West Africa, which was part of the target countries in measuring the Africa Open Parliament Index. Out of the 15 countries that West Africa has, 13 of them were the focus for the last index. And this is also because, of course, as we may be aware, Africa has, according to the African Union, 55 member states. In these 55, 15 are based in West Africa. And of course, because of resource constraint and what have you, we thought to pilot the Africa Open Parliament Index from West Africa for a variety of reasons, because West Africa gave us a good opportunity to test this module and to see how well it will work for all of us going forward. Fortunately, we were able to have the index launched, and the next slide, as I show you, gives an indication of what the results were when the Maiden Africa Open Parliament Index played out last year. 13 of the 15 West African countries were measured, because as at the time of measuring, 2 of the countries, Guinea-Conakry and Mali, were undergoing some form of military intervention, for which reason we could not measure their parliaments because their parliaments were non-existent. But when we measured, we realized some very interesting dynamics. For example, the very first country on the index in West Africa, which is Ghana, topped in open parliament with 63% only. I say only because we expect that our parliaments will be more transparent, accountable, and respond to citizens' participation in a higher manner. But to recognize that the best performing parliaments in West Africa scored 63% means that there is a lot more work that we all need to collaborate to do in achieving open parliaments on our continent. You would also realize that apart from the first 3 countries on the index, in this case, Ghana, Cape Verde, and Sierra Leone, none of the other countries made the 50% mark. So everybody else fell below average. What it means also is that there is so much that needs to be done in ensuring that we open up the parliaments of Africa, in this case, West Africa. But I'm sure that this paints a picture of the state of open parliaments on our continent generally. And so, recognizing the results of this Maiden Africa Open Parliament Index, PN Africa set out to do a few things. And of course, today is just to be able to recount. And so I'm not going to bore you with the further details of the index. But for those of you who are interested in having, who may not have seen the index 1 year down the line, you may want to connect to this link, www.parliamentafrica.com/OPI, where you can be able to download the index in English, in French, and in Portuguese, so that irrespective of the country, the language that you can relate with, you can be able to see the methodology, the findings, the recommendations, and all that you need to know about this Africa Open Parliament Index. Having said this now, these slides were just simply to help refresh our memories on how the index played out. So at this point, having shared with you what the results of the index were as at last year when it was launched, let me now go beyond the maiden OPI and talk a little bit also about what the expectations are for the next Open Parliament Index. First of all, it is instructive to note that the Maiden Open Parliament Index received a lot of positive feedback from the 13 countries that were measured. In fact, many of the parliaments, as we would learn from the panel discussion that we are about to listen to, received this in different forms and ways. We're happy to note that in some of the parliaments, the index was discussed on the floor of parliament. So members of parliament took time to discuss their country's performance in the index, and in many cases pledged their willingness to do more so that in the next index they can perform better. In some of the other countries, there were press releases, press conferences, speeches by high-powered high-level officials of parliament, including speakers of parliament, who cited the results of the Open Parliament Index, their country's performance, and what they hope to do going forward. Many of the countries actually challenged themselves to do better, while those at the top also said they were going to remain at the top. On the OPI link that I shared earlier, that we saw so many downloads from across the world, indicating that people were genuinely interested in the OPI. This also afforded us the opportunity to not only learn from Maria and the folks at Directorio Legislativo or the folks in Latin America, but also to share our own experiences here in Africa across the world. And so we had the opportunity to share the OPI's results and the lessons and experiences in Asia, in the Balkans region, in Europe, at the World Forum for Democracy, among many others. The index taught us a lot of interesting lessons, the 2022 index. The first was that it was not flawless. There certainly were ways and areas that, patrons, various parliaments, civil society identified that will need improvement. So this constructive feedback that we got from our partners will be certainly factored into developing the next index, because as you are aware, the Open Parliament Index is supposed to be released once every 2 years. Again, we saw the willingness existing for parliaments and civil society organizations to collaborate so that they can do better in the next index in 2024. Prior to embarking on this journey, we were not too sure how parliaments were going to embrace this and whether this was going to lead to any better collaboration and was going to be impactful, although we were optimistic. But we must say that over the last 1 year, it has proven to be a very great initiative. Thanks to Dave and the team at the National Endowment for Democracy, we have also done a few other things beyond launching the index. In 6 countries, specifically Niger, Nigeria, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, and Benin, we have provided sub-grants to the network of parliamentary monitoring organizations to be able to engage their national parliaments to ensure that civil society and parliament can co-create open parliament actions to do better in the upcoming index so we can see improvement. In Ghana, in Sierra Leone, and in the Gambia, PN Africa, because of our direct presence in these countries, we're also able to embark on a couple of interventions in these countries, all aimed at supporting civil society and parliament to improve on their score. In Lusophone West Africa, specifically Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, we have recently engaged with partners there to help strengthen the coalition of civil society organizations that engages with their national parliament. We have also realized that the OPI has served as a source of data for purposes of comparative future research. We have seen people discuss how the OPI results, the Open Parliament Index results, measures with the level of democracy in the countries, measures with the level of civic freedom in the various countries, measures with the level of press freedom, and also how the Open Parliament Index compares with the typology of parliaments that we have across the various countries. This has served as a quality baseline to aid in various parliamentary strengthening programs, projects, and proposals. Because prior to the launch of the index, we're only able to say that this parliament is open, that one is not too open, but there was no clear baseline to help us to be able to show that this is the level of openness and this is the area that has the various gaps. And so we are happy that various parliamentary monitoring organizations have been strengthened and encouraged through this index. Parliaments have been encouraged to take up various activities in their respective parliaments to make for a better index results in 2024 and beyond. But we also realized that there was quite a lack of understanding of open governance generally and open parliaments specifically, many parliaments. And this was quite a worrying trend, but we are seeing a lot of wave moving around where people are getting to imbibe. And so with a meeting like this, where we have partners, development partners, colleagues from the OGP, colleagues from NED, the National Democratic Institute, the IRI, the WFDs, the Parliamentary Center and the likes, who have, in one way or the other, engaged with us around these conversations. it is important that we strengthen the efforts, work together to strengthen the efforts in improving the level of understanding and uptake of open governance and open parliament in the various West African countries. For example, we've seen a very beautiful idea innovated in Morocco, where documents have been developed to talk about open parliament and what it means, and has been shared with members of parliament in the Moroccan parliament. We're looking forward to working with the folks in Morocco, Tariq and the team at the OGP and other stakeholders to ensure that we can have some of these materials also to help in the capacity building of parliamentarians across Africa. So going into Index 2024, what are we to expect? You know, because the Index 2022 only focused on West Africa, we have had colleagues from across the various parts, regions in Africa, calling on us to also include those regions. Of course, resource constraints were the reasons why we only had to do West Africa. But we are happy to note that going forward and counting on the continuous support of the National Endowment for Democracy and the folks with the Africa office, Dave and co, we're hoping that we can be able to expand the 2024 index beyond West Africa. So working with our colleagues at Mezzalendo, who have started some great work in the East African region, and also the possibility of adding the Southern African region, we are hopeful that the 2024 Open Parliament Index will cover not only 25% of African countries, as was the case in the 2022 index, but will move beyond a 50% of African countries, so that together with better resources, we can be able to also venture into the Northern African space and then the Central African space. And we hope that our partners will be able to come along and join us and support us in this endeavor. We're hoping that the next Open Parliament Index will measure the level of parliamentary openness as at the close of 2023 from these various countries in West Africa, in East Africa, and possibly in the Southern African region. It will be an intense measurement using improved methodology, using data, facts, and figures gleaned from parliaments themselves, gleaned from civil society in the various countries, gleaned from the media and other sources, to work within the period of January and June 2024 to ensure that by same time next year, on World Parliament Day, as we are actually observing today, we will be able to launch the second Africa Open Parliament Index, possibly at a conference of African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network. And again, for our partners who have joined us, the Network of African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations is seeking to be able to start its annual conferences, which brings together civil society from across the continent to talk about parliament and parliamentary engagement, on the back of which we'll be launching these indices. And we are still looking forward to mobilizing resources to be able to have this work go on. We are hoping that in the next index, we'll also be able to provide a menu of options to various countries on some of the areas that they are lacking in, what other countries are doing in these areas, and how they can emulate some of these examples. How they emulate some of these examples, thinking locally, but of course, taking experiences from the global perspective. Having said this, and as I bring my presentation to an end, we see that there is a big appetite for civil society collaborating with Parliament to co-create open Parliament reforms. And we have seen this in West Africa over the last 1 year. In fact, when the panel presents, we'll see some of the innovative ideas that have actually come up and some of the things that we thought were even impossible, which we are seeing parliaments do with civil society. The index has helped to strengthen the African Parliamentary Monitoring Organizations Network. The index has helped to also bring the angle of the media through our Africa Parliamentary Press Network. And we have also seen a lot of interest from the ECOWAS Parliament and the Pan-African Parliament in this regard. These are all emerging areas, developing the network of parliamentary monitoring organizations, developing the network of journalists, working with the ECOWAS Parliament and the Pan-African Parliament, as well as the other sub-regional parliaments in East Africa, Southern Africa, and the likes, are emerging areas that we can all work together to venture into. And we call on our development partners, colleagues from civil society, to work with us in this regard. On that note, let me thank you all very, very much for making time to join us in today's event. I'm happy to note that almost about 100 people have made time to join us today. And I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation on the panel to see how things go and how things have panned out in the various countries. Over to you, Ben, and thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Sami, for the very insightful presentation, taking us through the steps, the actions, and some of the things that were done, and even the results that were launched, or the reports of the OPI, and also looking into the next OPI, which will be launched in 2024. Thank you very much. Just as Sami mentioned, the index report was received by several parliaments in West Africa, giving different or various reactions to the results, their results, and even promising, assuring that they are going to work with the PMOs to improve in the next index. At this point, we would like to have a panel discussion. And so very soon we'll be moving into that. But before that, would again crave your indulgence to get you to tell us in one word how you would describe your parliament. And so you would see a Mentimeter link shared in the chat box. A Mentimeter link will be shared in the chat box. You would see an accompanying passcode. You copy the passcode, you click on the Mentimeter link. It will open a portal where you can input the passcode and then answer the question you will see. Describe your parliament using one word. We want to see how you describe your parliament. It will be very interesting to know how you will. We can use a minute to finish this up. In the chat box, you would see the Mentimeter link shared in there with the passcode. You copy the passcode. You click the link. It will take you to a portal or a website where you can input the code, and then it will open a question. The question will ask you to describe your parliament using one word. And I hope the technical team is on standby to show us how our partners or our guests are describing their parliaments. Emerging parliaments, participatory parliaments, progressive, opaque, work in progress parliaments, ambitious parliaments. Wow, that's interesting to know. We are still hoping to hear from the rest of you who haven't yet done that. Just click on the link. You input the code, and then it will open the question for you to describe your parliament using one word. Ineffective parliaments, contentious parliaments, strong parliaments, and use the next few seconds to finish up. Dependent parliaments, not accountable parliaments, weak parliaments, unfriendly, wow, unfriendly parliaments. Okay, thank you very much for describing your parliament using the various words. It's interesting to know how you think or what you think about your parliament. Thank you very much. At this moment, we'd like to move into the panel discussion. And so this is going to be a discussion where we'd hear from our partners in country, in West Africa, were supported to work with parliaments to see how best they can improve the situation using the index. A lot of efforts, as Sami mentioned, has gone on right from the side of the PMO networks and also on the side of parliament. So would move into this discussion where my colleague Cynthia Jujo, who is a senior programs officer, would moderate the session. Cynthia, if you can hear me, please take over.
All right, thank you, Ben, for that presentation. I would be the one moderating the session. The session will be in two folds. We'd have the Anglophone panel, and we'd also have the Francophone panel. I'll be starting with the Francophone panel, and for that reason, I'll be switching to French. And so if you want to listen in on the English, please click on the interpretation button and opt for English so that you can listen in on the discussions. Without much ado, yes, donc, bonjour à tous. Et c'est moi, Cynthia, qui sera votre modératrice pour cette session. La session, c'est la discussion ou bien les rondes-tables. Et on va commencer par le pays francophone. Alors, permettez-moi tout d'abord de présenter nos panélistes. Nous avons ici des représentants du Parlement, du Bénin et du Niger. Pour le Parlement du Bénin, s'il vous plaît, nous avons l'honorable Aladatin Jean-Baptiste, qui est le président de la Commission des lois, de l'administration et des droits de l'homme. Pour le Niger, nous avons l'honorable Alio Namata, qui est également président du réseau des parlementaires pour la promotion de la gouvernance et la lutte contre la corruption, et il est aussi le secrétaire parlementaire. Le réseau des organisations de suivi parlementaire, ça c'est OSP, qui ont été créés, sont coordonnés et représentés par nos partenaires qui font partie du panel. Pour représenter le réseau OSP Bénin, nous avons Madame Blanche Denon, qui est aussi la présidente du conseil d'administration des Social Watch Bénin. Deuxièmement, nous avons Monsieur Umaru Adamu, qui est le coordinateur national du réseau nigérien anticorruption. Le troisième, sur la liste, c'est Monsieur Kafalo Segoba Siliwe, directeur exécutif du Centre de recherche et de formation sur le développement intégré, CREVDI, qui est situé en Côte d'Ivoire. Enfin, nous accueillons Monsieur Bakou Roger, coordinateur du programme régional pour l'Afrique du collectif des associations contre l'impunité au Togo, CACSIT. Alors, on va commencer par le pays Niger. Et la première question s'adresse à la fois au Parlement et aussi le réseau. Alors, je commence. Nous voulons savoir si vous êtes là et vous m'attendez. Nous voulons savoir comment votre Parlement a-t-il reçu les informations sur l'indice du Parlement ouvert et quelles ont été les actions immédiates prises à cet égard? Ça peut être les
As ações
déclarations de presse,
imediatas são as declarações da mídia,
les discussions au sein du Parlement, inclusion dans les
as
discours
discussões,
officiels, ainsi de suite. Donc, Monsieur Alio Namata, l'honorable, s'il vous plaît, vous avez la parole.
Bonjour madame, merci beaucoup.
Bonjour.
Je commence par m'excuser. Allô, vous m'entendez?
Oui,
Vous m'entendez?
oui, on vous attend.
Vous m'entendez?
Oui,
Oui,
s'il
merci
vous plaît.
beaucoup. Oui, je commence par présenter mes excuses parce que je pensais que ça commençait plutôt avec le panel et je vais quitter malheureusement, mais je vais répondre quand même à cette question.
OK.
Mais je vais quitter juste après. J'avais annoncé ça dans un message que j'avais envoyé il y a 20 minutes pour dire que je dois. Oui. Donc, oui, comment on a reçu l'information au niveau du Parlement nigérien? En réalité, cette information, nous l'avons reçue à travers le collectif de la société civile, hein, qui est représenté ici, c'est le RENAC,
Ouais.
et à travers lequel on a échangé et on a tenu une journée de discussion sur l'indice du Parlement ouvert avec, dans un premier temps, les membres du réseau parlementaire pour la bonne gouvernance et la lutte contre la corruption. Donc, il y avait une dizaine de parlementaires qui étaient dans cette discussion, en plus des membres de la société civile. Et à l'issue un peu de décision, l'idée, c'était de présenter l'initiative et d'échanger pour que les membres du Parlement contribuent, n'est-ce pas, à, comment on appelle ça, à évaluer l'indice, donner leur appréciation du niveau d'ouverture de notre Parlement. Mais à l'issue de ça, donc, on a mis en place un comité composé d'une dizaine de membres, dont 3 membres justement du Parlement. Et un plan d'action a été mis en place pour accompagner le processus de discussion et d'influence au niveau du Parlement pour renforcer un peu les points faibles que nous avons identifiés. Je vais peut-être m'arrêter pour ça pour le moment. Merci, madame.
Merci aussi. Et vous êtes excusé, oui, je comprends bien la situation.
Merci.
Monsieur Adamou, êtes-vous là? Est-ce que vous pouvez prendre la même question? Comment
Oui.
votre Parlement a-t-il reçu les informations? Et est-ce qu'il y a une autre chose, à part de ce que l'honorable a dit?
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que l'honorable a presque tout dit parce qu'en réalité, comme il l'a dit, il y avait un plan d'action qui a été élaboré, donc un travail que nous devons faire ensemble. Et c'est un comité quand même composé de la société civile, des parlementaires, des journalistes, et aussi la direction de la communication de l'Assemblée nationale, non seulement avec les commissions parlementaires, et aussi avec, non seulement, et en plus de ça aussi, travailler quand même avec le réseau que Alio dirige, parce que le réseau de Alio est un réseau qui compose aussi à peu près 109 parlementaires. Donc, c'est quand même le secrétariat général et même le président du Parlement pour échanger avec lui sur cette question.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup. Donc, pour vous, la question, c'est quels sont les principaux enseignants tirés de l'engagement avec le Parlement, de la mise en œuvre des recommandations depuis la publication de l'indice du Parlement ouvert, et comment ces enseignants peuvent-ils éclairer l'élaboration du prochain indice 2024 et contribuer à des progrès durables en matière d'ouverture parlementaire?
Ok, merci.
pour quand même les enseignements tirés, que la première présentation, non seulement au niveau de la société civile, au niveau des médias, au niveau du Parlement, nous nous sommes rendus compte quand même qu'on devrait voir comment renforcer le processus pour que, dans un premier temps, tout ce qui est lacune, comme l'a dit l'honorable, qui a été identifié dans un premier temps, comment faire en sorte que les acteurs de la société civile et les parlementaires puissent travailler ensemble pour y remédier, pour que dans le prochain OPI, que quand même le pays soit bien placé en termes d'indice de parlement ouvert. Et deuxième chose, c'est de faire en sorte que lors du prochain indice, qu'on puisse trouver quand même des questionnaires à l'endroit de plusieurs parlementaires où on aura, même au sein du Parlement, plusieurs groupes qui vont essayer quand même de pouvoir répondre. Et ce qui nous permettrait d'avoir des avis un peu qui ne sont pas les mêmes en réalité, au lieu que ce soit le Parlement en tant que structure qui répond, vous mieux mettre l'indice à la disposition, le questionnaire à la disposition des parlementaires pour que chaque groupe parlementaire puisse répondre en fonction des réalités qu'ils connaissent au sein du Parlement. Deuxième chose, c'est de vraiment faire en sorte que d'abord la société civile elle-même, certes on a eu à faire des activités, mais quand même de pouvoir renforcer les capacités de la société civile sur le suivi parlementaire. Et je me rappelle lors de l'atelier, l'honorable disait que c'est bien, c'est maintenant, on voit que eux qui font le suivi de l'action gouvernementale, aujourd'hui, il y a des acteurs qui les suivent. Donc, ça veut dire que déjà, ça fait en sorte que les honorables savent que déjà, il y a aujourd'hui un réseau ou des organisations de la société civile qui est en train de suivre la performance du Parlement, qui est en train de suivre les actions du Parlement. Là, c'est déjà une prise de conscience, et le fait de faire en sorte que au sein de ce Parlement, lors des rencontres, il y a eu, et quand on regarde même dans le comité pour composer le comité de suivi, de mise en œuvre des recommandations des recommandations non seulement de l'indice, mais aussi des recommandations ici de l'atelier d'échange que nous avons organisé avec les parlementaires. Donc, autre chose, c'est aussi faire en sorte que quand même le bureau de l'Assemblée dans son ensemble puisse vraiment comprendre ce qui se passe. Et aussi, on avait demandé aussi le renforcement des capacités de la direction de la communication de l'Assemblée. Parce que ça nous a permis de comprendre quand même, il y a certaines choses en réalité qui sont là, qui sont disponibles, ou certaines informations qui peuvent être mises à la disposition non seulement des populations nigériennes ou d'autres acteurs, mais ce qu'en réalité la communication ne suivait pas, et qu'il y a moins de publications, même certains projets de loi qui sont votés au niveau du Parlement, certaines propositions de loi ou d'autres informations parlementaires, en réalité ne sont pas diffusées. Et même quand vous regardez la liste des parlementaires et tous ceux qui s'en sont, le groupe parlementaire et autres, ne sont pas à jour sur le site. Donc, il y a tellement de manquements au niveau de l'accès à l'information. Et nous avons vraiment demandé de voir dans quelles possibilités nous allons travailler avec le secrétariat général du Parlement. Et dernièrement, on a tenu une réunion avec l'honorable, que je remercie d'abord, où on a demandé aussi de voir avec les comités institutionnels et aussi en réalité la direction de la communication et le directeur de cabinet du président de l'Assemblée nationale pour renforcer ces questions-là au sein du Parlement.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Adamou. Ensuite, c'est à vous, l'honorable Aladaten Jean-Baptiste. C'est la même question, mais je vais dire ça encore. Comment votre Parlement a-t-il reçu les informations sur l'indice du Parlement ouvert et quelles ont été les actions immédiates prises à cet égard? Et comme je t'avais dit déjà, ça peut être les déclarations de presse, les discussions au sein du Parlement ou bien inclusion dans les discours officiels du Parlement. Donc, ça c'est à... Maintenant, nous sommes à monsieur ou bien l'honneur.
D'accord, merci.
Oui, et oui, c'est à vous. Vous avez la
Merci. Donc, Jean-Baptiste Orben, je voulais saluer le panel et tous ceux qui sont en ligne, beaucoup de participants, dont beaucoup de députés de l'Assemblée nationale du Bénin qui sont mobilisés et qui sont en ligne. Alors, l'Assemblée nationale du Bénin a été tenue informée de l'index du Parlement ouvert à l'occasion d'une audience que le président de l'Assemblée nationale, Louis Blavou, a accordée à une délégation du réseau parlementaire d'Afrique. Et ça a été à la demande de Social Watch Bénin, qui est un réseau d'ONG qui travaille donc dans les secteurs de la bonne gouvernance et de la transparence. Voilà, donc il faut ajouter que le Parlement du Bénin a été depuis longtemps un peu sensible, d'accord, à l'ouverture. Donc, suite à cette audience, le président de l'Assemblée nationale a désigné des cadres de l'administration qui ont participé après à un séminaire conjointement organisé par Social Watch et le réseau parlementaire d'Afrique pour mieux comprendre le programme sur l'index du Parlement ouvert. C'est après cela que le Parlement du Bénin est rentré donc dans le processus d'évaluation avec des cadres qui ont été désignés pour vraiment informer de ce qui se fait au Bénin dans le sens de l'ouverture et a répondu au questionnaire et a participé à l'évaluation. C'est bien après cela qu'à travers les discours du président de l'Assemblée nationale et en plénière à l'Assemblée nationale, les résultats ont été annoncés et beaucoup de députés ont su qu'il y avait une telle évaluation et la place occupée par le Bénin a été annoncée en plénière et à l'occasion de beaucoup de discours tenus par le président de l'Assemblée nationale. Voilà ce que je pourrais dire.
Oui, merci beaucoup. La deuxième question, c'est le réseau parlementaire d'Afrique et le réseau des organisations de suivi parlementaire ont lancé l'indice du Parlement ouvert, comme on a dit, oui, afin d'évaluer le niveau d'ouverture des parlements en Afrique de l'Ouest. Depuis le lancement du rapport, PNAFTA a soutenu certains réseaux dans les pays sélectionnés pour travailler avec les parlements afin de mettre en œuvre des réformes et des actions visant à renforcer l'ouverture parlementaire. Après avoir reçu les subventions en 2022, comment le Parlement, ça c'est votre Parlement, a-t-il intégré les conclusions et les recommandations de l'indice du Parlement ouvert de l'Afrique dans cet effort de réforme? Et pouvez-vous donner des exemples spécifiques des réformes mises en œuvre ou des étapes vers telle réforme ou bien l'impact?
D'accord.
Merci.
D'accord. Je peux y aller?
Oui, vous pouvez. Vous allez là.
D'accord. D'abord, l'Assemblée nationale du Bénin n'a pas reçu de subvention, peut-être la société civile, mais nous n'avons pas.
Oui.
Voilà, mais l'Assemblée nationale n'a pas reçu de subvention relative dans le cadre de l'évaluation de l'indice du Parlement ouvert en 2022. Et il convient de souligner, tel que je l'ai dit, que l'Assemblée nationale était déjà sensible à l'ouverture. Et le président de l'Assemblée nationale, qui d'ailleurs a été le président de la législature passée, avait pour point important de son action l'ouverture. Il y a une action que je voudrais souligner au passage qui a été mise en œuvre même avant 2022 et qui continue là, c'est la création de la télévision de l'hémicycle, l'une des rares télévisions de l'Afrique francophone, voire même du monde, à retransmettre en direct les débats parlementaires. Donc, à travers la télé, à travers la radio, et les débats en plénière sont depuis un moment retransmis en direct. Voilà, c'est une innovation que nous avons eue avant d'être informés donc, de l'indice du Parlement ouvert. Naturellement, cette évaluation a permis à l'Assemblée nationale d'envisager des réformes pour renforcer ce qui se faisait déjà. Au titre de ces réformes envisagées, nous pensons qu'il faut renforcer la médiatisation de la participation des acteurs de la société civile à l'élaboration du budget de l'État, par exemple. Ça se faisait lors de la discussion pour voter le budget de l'État. Nous avions l'habitude d'inviter en plénière les réseaux qui s'occupent des questions de gouvernance à l'Assemblée nationale et qui opinent et disent leur point de vue sur le projet qui a été envoyé. Mais souvent, ce n'est pas très bien médiatisé, bon, les gens ne le savent pas. Donc, nous pensons qu'il faut prendre des mesures pour mieux médiatiser cela. Il faut améliorer aussi la diffusion sur l'étendue du territoire national d'informations sur les activités parlementaires, sur les décisions prises et les résultats obtenus. Nous sommes conscients que ça ne se fait pas suffisamment et qu'il faut renforcer cela. Et puis utiliser un peu le site web du Parlement pour interagir avec les populations. Alors, vous avez les propositions et les projets de loi qui sont en étude à l'Assemblée nationale à travers donc ces supports-là peuvent être discutés et il peut y avoir plus de participation populaire pour l'étude de ces textes de loi-là. Et puis, impliquer davantage la société civile. Nous le faisons déjà parce que, je vous ai dit, pour le budget et même pour l'étude des textes, des lois et consorts, il nous arrive d'inviter les ONG, dont c'est la thématique en commission pour avoir leur avis. Le seul problème, c'est qu'en commission, la société civile ne peut pas participer à nos discussions et participer à nos délibérations. Mais il nous est arrivé d'avoir de leur part des mémoires dont nous avons fortement tenu compte. Nous avions même, à l'occasion des plénières, parfois associé la société civile qui, à travers ses propositions, a influencé des textes que nous avons eu à voter au Parlement. Donc, je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à vos questions.
Oui, vous avez bien répondu. Merci, merci beaucoup pour vos réponses. Maintenant, à vous, Madame Senon, pouvez-vous nous faire part d'approches innovantes ou des bonnes pratiques qui se sont avérées efficaces pour renforcer l'ouverture du Parlement dans votre pays? Ça, c'est le Bénin. Est-ce qu'il y a des approches efficaces ou bien d'approches innovantes que vous voulez partager avec nous? Madame Senon, vous avez la parole maintenant.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Mes respects honorables à la Dati et bonjour aussi aux invités en ligne. Par rapport à l'expérience du Parlement ouvert au Bénin, reconnaissons que l'audience que le président de l'Assemblée nationale a accordée au réseau parlementaire d'Afrique sur la demande de Social Watch Bénin, au cours de cette audience, l'un des résultats phares est l'engagement institutionnel et personnel que le président du Parlement béninois a pris pour davantage d'ouverture de notre Parlement. C'est très important et du coup, la manifestation de cet engagement a suivi parce que séance tenante, il a instruit déjà ses collaborateurs rapprochés qui étaient dans l'audience et d'autres à œuvrer pour l'amélioration, pour sauvegarder ce nouveau partenariat. Et devant nous, il a instruit aussi les services en charge de l'information et de la communication à actualiser et animer de façon continue le site web de l'Assemblée nationale. Comme bonne pratique, avouons-le, en raison du cadre législatif, de l'ouverture de gouvernance de façon générale et en particulier l'engagement du président de l'Assemblée nationale et ces cadres techniques de l'administration qui portent aussi la dynamique d'ouverture parlementaire, nous avons pu renforcer le partenariat entre société civile et l'Assemblée nationale. J'ai parlé de renforcer parce que déjà, nous sommes dans un dialogue dans le cadre du suivi budgétaire. Et en dehors de ça, grâce à ce projet de Parlement ouvert, il y a plus de proximité entre la société civile et le Parlement béninois. Donc, nous avons d'abord organisé un atelier de renforcement de capacité d'information sur le projet et de renforcement de capacité qui a permis non seulement aux membres du réseau béninois pour le Parlement ouvert, mais aussi aux deux cadres de l'administration du Parlement béninois qui ont participé à cet atelier d'avoir plus des informations sur la dynamique du Parlement ouvert. Et ça a été le levier qui a permis de booster quand même l'opérationnalisation de l'engagement du président de l'Assemblée nationale. Donc, en partenariat avec le Parlement béninois et de façon consensuelle, nous avons élaboré une feuille de route que nous mettons déjà en œuvre par l'activité de Facebook Live dont l'honorable Aladati a parlé tantôt. Nous avons renforcé le dialogue, la proximité, l'offre de redevabilité tout court de l'Assemblée nationale vis-à-vis de ses mandants. Il faut reconnaître aussi que l'engagement du président de l'Assemblée nationale a été soldé par le lancement des services de la télévision de l'hémicycle et l'élargissement de l'auditoire de la radio de l'hémicycle qui retransmettent en direct sans filtrer les débats parlementaires. C'est à l'actif de l'Assemblée nationale béninoise. En dehors de ça, le Bénin aussi, à travers Social Watch Bénin, qui a le lead du réseau parlementaire de promotion de parlement ouvert, a entrepris d'autres dialogues société civile, population et le Parlement afin de faire connaître les rôles et responsabilités du deuxième pouvoir de l'État béninois, mais aussi œuvrer pour la participation, renforcer, je vais dire, la participation du public et aussi faire la demande de redevabilité en matière de transparence. Nous sommes aussi dans la dynamique de plaidoyer au fin de l'amélioration du contrôle parlementaire de l'action du gouvernement. Et dans ce sens, nous avons aussi fait le plaidoyer à l'endroit du Parlement afin que le Bénin puisse renouer avec la culture de la participation inclusive du public en matière dans le domaine légistique, qui
Merci.
reconnaît quand même que le Parlement implique les parties prenantes indiquées en amont, donc lors de l'élaboration de l'avant-projet ou de proposition de loi.
D'accord, merci beaucoup. Pouvez-vous nous parler un peu sur des missions radio avec vos députés? Je sais qu'il y a quelque chose comme ça qui est en train de passer. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous parler sur ça un peu?
Le lundi prochain, nous allons réaliser la seconde Facebook Live et la thématique, les points d'attention, les sujets qui peuvent faire objet d'interpellations, de questions écrites, de questions orales avec ou sans des, et pourquoi pas d'enquête parlementaire. Donc, c'est sur ces points d'attention que nous allons discuter le lundi prochain et après, dans la suite de la mise en œuvre de notre feuille de route, nous allons commencer à animer des débats radiophoniques qui seront animés par nos honorables députés. Et le comble, c'est quoi? L'Assemblée nationale a mis à disposition une salle intelligente qui va abriter ces activités et aussi la connexion entre Social Watch Bénin, donc le réseau parlementaire, le réseau de suivi parlementaire du Bénin, avec la radio. Il y aura une connexion sur le site de la radio, la télévision et autres pour ratisser large en matière de participation inclusive du public.
D'accord, merci beaucoup, madame. Ensuite, nous irons à Monsieur Roger. Et pour vous, la question c'est quels sont certains des défis communs racontés par votre réseau dans leur effort pour améliorer la transparence, la responsabilité et la participation? Et comment ces défis peuvent-ils être relevés pour améliorer l'efficacité des réformes parlementaires? Monsieur Roger, est-ce que vous êtes là?
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Merci.
OK. Bon, au Togo, le défi majeur que nous avons, c'est vraiment la possibilité ou bien la collaboration officielle entre le Parlement et les OSC, justement pour améliorer la transparence ou l'ouverture parlementaire. Je dirais que c'est le premier défi que nous avons, c'est-à-dire qu'à ce jour, nous avons des rencontres avec des députés, nous avons multiplié les rencontres avec les députés. Nous avons aussi réussi à créer un réseau d'organisations Parlement ouvert au Togo et ce réseau est déjà actif. Actuellement même, nous avons certaines organisations qui sont en train de faire le monitoring au niveau de, puisque l'Assemblée nationale est en session. Donc, on a des organisations qui sont en train de faire le monitoring au niveau justement de cette session-là. Mais de façon officielle, nous ne sommes pas encore arrivés à établir une collaboration avec l'institution en elle-même. Donc, aujourd'hui, c'est le premier défi au niveau du Togo. Et un autre défi aussi, c'est de susciter davantage l'intérêt des populations pour justement suivre l'action des parlementaires. Je dirais que le concept du Parlement ouvert, c'est un concept assez nouveau au Togo, tant pour, je dirais, tant pour les organisations de la société civile que même pour les parlementaires. Donc, nous avons eu un atelier avec PN Africa en 2022. Et justement, c'est après cet atelier-là même que le réseau, la volonté de se constituer un réseau pour travailler en faveur d'une meilleure ouverture parlementaire au Togo, et que cette volonté-là a surgi. Donc, nous sommes encore en train de mettre en place petit à petit cette collaboration avec notre Parlement. Donc, je dirais que concrètement, ce sont les deux défis majeurs que nous avons au niveau du Togo. Merci.
Merci aussi, Monsieur Roger. La même question pour vous, Monsieur Siloué. Je vais poser la question une fois encore. Quels sont certains défis communs?
Le frère, non, j'ai...
Est-ce que je peux parler? OK. Pour vous, Monsieur Siloué, quels sont certains des défis communs rencontrés par le réseau dans leur effort pour améliorer la transparence, la responsabilité et la participation civique? Et comment ces défis peuvent-ils être relevés pour améliorer l'efficacité des réformes parlementaires? Est-ce que vous m'attendez, s'il vous plaît, Monsieur Siloué?
Vous m'entendez?
Oui, il est là. Vous avez la parole, s'il vous
D'accord.
plaît.
D'accord. Merci beaucoup, Madame Dudio. Ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que nous avons proposé un projet à PEN Africa qui a été lancé et intitulé justement Promotion de l'indice du Parlement ouvert en Côte d'Ivoire. Donc, nous avons commencé la mise en œuvre de ce projet-là au mois de mai, fin mai plus précisément. Et c'est dans le déroulement de ce projet-là que nous avons inscrit toutes les activités de promotion, de sensibilisation par rapport à l'indice du Parlement ouvert. Il faut dire que lors de la première activité de ce projet, nous avons organisé un atelier de formation au cours duquel nous avons bénéficié de la communication de PEN Africa, qui nous a rafraîchi un peu la mémoire sur les objectifs, les tenants de la notion de Parlement ouvert, ce qui était très important parce que c'est une notion assez nouvelle. Et nous avons par la suite eu le privilège de présentation de deux communications, une de chaque chambre de notre Parlement. Il faut souligner que notre Parlement est bicaméral depuis 2016. Nous avons l'Assemblée nationale et puis le Sénat. Donc, nous avons reçu un représentant de l'Assemblée nationale qui est député, qui est aussi président de la commission de suivi des politiques publiques. Et nous avons reçu aussi une communication du directeur, d'un des directeurs du Sénat, qui représentait le Sénat, sur justement la question de l'ouverture parlementaire. Donc, chacun a fait une présentation au niveau de son institution. Donc, il faut dire que c'est justement, c'était justement pour balayer un peu le terrain, pour voir ce qui était fait. Et donc, il faut dire que nous, à la suite de l'atelier de 2021, où nous avons été édifiés la première fois sur le Parlement ouvert, l'équipe de PEN Africa avec nous-mêmes avions bénéficié d'une rencontre avec le Parlement. Nous avons été reçus par les parlementaires au niveau de l'Assemblée nationale. Il y avait plusieurs parlementaires, dont plusieurs présidents de commissions permanentes, à qui M. Obeng avait justement présenté l'initiative, présenté ses tenants et ses aboutissants. Et la présentation avait eu beaucoup d'engouement, avait reçu beaucoup d'engouement de la part des parlementaires dans un premier temps. Et ça, c'était avant l'indice du Parlement ouvert, le premier indice du Parlement ouvert à proprement parler. Donc, par la suite, nous avons pu administrer le questionnaire de l'indice et nous avons présenté les résultats. Donc, il s'agit maintenant, à travers le projet que nous sommes en train de mettre en œuvre, de faire la promotion. Et nous avons promis d'aller vers toutes les parties prenantes, pas seulement les parlementaires. Et actuellement, nous sommes au niveau du dispatching des courriers et nous attendons les premières réactions pour pouvoir rencontrer les parties prenantes. Il faut dire que nous avons ciblé toutes les parties prenantes, que ce soit les parlementaires eux-mêmes, mais aussi les organisations internationales qui interviennent en Côte d'Ivoire, les organisations de la société civile, les organisations de communication, etc. Donc, c'est vraiment un processus qui prend son envol et peut-être qu'il serait un peu tôt de faire un bilan, à mon sens. Toujours est-il que lors de l'atelier de formation, c'est-à-dire le 24 mai, le représentant de l'Assemblée nationale et le représentant du Sénat nous ont présenté ce qui était déjà fait au niveau de ces deux institutions par rapport à la transparence, par rapport à voilà, par rapport aux 3 thématiques incluses dans le Parlement ouvert. Donc, c'est ce que je peux dire pour le moment.
Oui, merci beaucoup, M. Sidoué. Maintenant, c'est la fin du panel francophone. Donc, je vous remercie tous pour vos contributions, vos remarques et les leçons que vous avez partagées avec nous. Elles devraient inspirer d'autres parlements et la société civile dans la promotion d'un parlement ouvert. Nous passons maintenant au panel suivant, qui est le panel anglais. Yes, so thank you very much. We are now going to move to our next panel, which is the English panel. And for the English panel, we have these countries represented. We have Sierra Leone, we have Ghana. Permit me to introduce our panelists. From Ghana, that is from the Parliament of Ghana, we have lawyer Prosper Hoitu, who is the Senior Research Officer at the Office of the Speaker. We also have in our midst Mr. Gilbert Bosco Nabe, the Director of the Department of Programs, Research and Partnership from the Parliament of Sierra Leone. We also have in our midst a very instrumental funder, that is WFD. They have been very instrumental in supporting the PMO network in Sierra Leone. And today we are happy to have them, to have the country director of WFD, that is Reverend Diamond Suma, to speak on behalf of the PMO network in Sierra Leone. And so I'm happy to have all of you here. I think we'll start once again with the Parliament. And so the very first question goes to our parliamentarians or the parliamentary reps over here. So the first question, how did your parliament receive the news on the Open Parliament Index, and what were some of the immediate actions that were taken in that regard? This could be press statements, discussions on the floor of Parliament, inclusion in speakers' official speeches, anything in that regard. So I'll give you the platform now to speak. Lawyer Prosper Hoitu, please, you have the chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone. I first of all want to commend PN Africa and Africa PMO's network for such a great initiative, and also your continuous efforts in ensuring that our parliaments are open and they continue to share information and also engage with the public. Yes, the news came to us as such a great news. It came with such excitement. And there was a lot of media coverage and publicity about the news, particularly because Ghana was rated the first country in terms of openness. And following that, there have been several engagements as well. Even though it came with excitement, it also presented some point of reflection on what we are doing right as Parliament and what we need to do to improve, because even though the scores, we were first, the scores show that there's more room for improvement in many respects. So much as it was exciting, there was also reflection on the need for improvement. The Right Honorable Speaker made statements where he acknowledged the recognition that Ghana's parliament gained, but also there was a whole discussion on the floor of parliament where members contributed in diverse ways and made references to various initiatives that may have contributed to the feats that Ghana achieved. References were made to certain initiatives like the Speakers Roundtable discussions with CSOs and other stakeholders, public fora that we have held in various parts of the country, as well as the regular meetings that the Right Honorable Speaker, as well as leadership of Parliament have been holding with CSOs to first update them on certain developments in Parliament, and also to afford CSO the opportunity to share their concerns and observations with Parliament. So briefly, that's what I would say about how we received the news and what actions have been taken since then.
All right, thank you very much for that generous response. I think the same question will be taken by Mr. Gilbert Nabe. If he's here with us, can you please answer that question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Cynthia. And I also want to comment by expressing my sincere thanks and appreciation to PN Africa for this very great and wonderful initiative. And it's something that I'm sure will provide some very great impetus for Parliament to see how we could improve our openness as we get along. Well, we in the Parliament of Sierra Leone, we received the news of our position within the index, which is like we came third in Sierra Leone, and with some excitement, because I know that before this period, that was a year before the index, the Open Parliamentary Index was run, there had been like a frosty relationship between Parliament of Sierra Leone and civil society. In fact, the civil society had even come out with this in a situation. But ever since after that very bitter and frosty relationship, some of us, of course, we are able to push forward to say that it's need for us to see how we could cement the relationship and bridge every gap that has existed between Parliament and the civil society. So just after that, we actually signed a communique with the civil societies, 52 civil societies in Sierra Leone. And so our relationship was cemented. We are now working together and we are doing everything. So therefore, when the news came, of course, it was discussed in Parliament. The Speaker was very much excited about it. And I happen to be also the speech writer for the Speaker. So I could still recall that there was a particular engagement the Speaker needed to attend. And he personally asked me to ensure that that particular component and that has to do with the outcome of the Open Parliament Index report be placed in a speech. So the Speaker was excited. It was deliberated within the confines of Parliament, and there was general excitement amongst the Sierra Leone Parliament to say, we are making some efforts to see how we could open up Parliament. So it was a moment in which even the members of Parliament also discussed it at committee levels. And I also took some time to actually run this through with the management of the parliamentary service within the Parliament of Sierra Leone, because I completed the process on behalf of Parliament. And so we are able to provide some very useful information. So I think that is definitely my response to what was the feeling upon receiving the news, as well as actions taken thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nabe. I'd like to bring lawyer Prosper Huitu back again to just answer a small question for us. He's spoken about how the news was received by the Parliament of Ghana, especially the Speaker. Would like to know what specific reforms have been implemented so far by the Parliament after they had received this news, and also the recommendations in the report.
Good, thank you very much. So with such a great news, you need to be careful to work hard in order to maintain your position. Otherwise, when Ghana's parliament drops in the next OPI, it would be like we have retrogressed. So two important things happened after the news. There was actually a special session with the Ghana PMOs network, where there was a presentation of the findings from the index. And then secondly, the Right Honorable Speaker commissioned a survey. And the survey was to understand CSO's perception on the work of Parliament and also their challenges. And through that, one thing that stood out as part of the recommendations was that there was the need to mainstream CSO's engagement with Parliament instead of the ad hoc meetings that we've been calling. And so from that, immediately the Right Honorable Speaker directed the establishment of what we call a Citizens Bureau. A Citizens Bureau as a coordinating mechanism of engagement between CSOs and Parliament. So this is an office located in Parliament, which I believe will be inaugurated officially next month, dedicated to coordinating CSOs' engagement with Parliament and making sure that we make things a bit more easier for them, providing access to information from Parliament, generating information, updating our website regularly with public information that will be useful to them. And if CSOs want to conduct any research involving Parliament, this is an office that they could fall on. And Parliament also intends to leverage this relationship with CSOs to promote public education. Because one key challenge that we face is the public inadequate understanding of the work of Parliament. So, and aside the establishment of the Citizens Bureau and all the functions that it's supposed to perform, there has been some reform also at the public affairs section, which includes the establishment of a department with a director responsible for public engagement. And so it tells you that Parliament of Ghana takes the question of public engagement seriously. And then there are also plans to, it's been on the drawing board for some time, to establish a radio and a TV station that will also enhance public education. Then Ghana's standing orders, our parliament standing orders are undergoing review to allow media and public participation in the sittings of parliamentary committees, which we think will be very significant. So these are some of the reforms that are ongoing, and we believe strongly that this, if properly implemented, will open up Ghana's parliament much more to provide access to information and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And finally, to Reverend Diamond Suma, the last question comes to you. Can you share with us some innovative approaches or best practices that have been effective in enhancing open parliament in your country?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks to PN Africa for this. I'm just going to continue from where Gilbert stopped, because we're all walking in the same path for the Parliament of Sierra Leone. So when the news came in that Sierra Leone scored third position in the Open Parliament Index, like Gilbert said, there was excitement. It was announced in the world, and Parliament did quarterly and regional review. And of course, this came in the speeches of the Speaker, the Clerk of Parliament. And there is a whole, what I would call rejuvenation back into the interest of the open government partnership work, of which Parliament is in its second year within the OGP National Action Plan. So there is that whole overhauling. There was the Speaker had to call to check on the composition, the board membership, and to know how is it going on. And so it feels special interest and concerns around OGP work in the Parliament. So there was this setup that Gilbert mentioned, the CSO parliamentary network called the PAL-CISO-Net. The Speaker and the Clerk pushed that there should be a physical office space for CSOs in Parliament. A whole structure was set. Of course, it's under Gilbert's units in Parliament. He had to assign a staff dedicated on that to coordinate that. CSO also had to send a coordinating person within this center, wherein it will be an intermediary between CSO and Parliament to participate in the lawmaking process. Another critical reform that came up is that Sierra Leone decided to give much more attention in OGP, open government work, especially due to this index across. Myself, Sami, and the Speaker, we were in Morocco for the last OGP summit. And in all his speech, I mean, he mentioned PN Africa, he mentioned the Open Parliament Index and the scores, and he was so excited. And we had other speakers and other players in the room within Global South were like saying, okay, how can we be able to exercise this? So us as development partners in Parliament were to support those reforms to ensure that, okay, Parliament work in close collaboration with citizens through the CSO. So we've had a number of trainings, and Parliament is very much more receptive with the work of CSOs. And now Parliament has committed, of course, through Gilbert's office, to start doing what we call post-legislative scrutiny. So WFD is supporting our parliamentary staff and the CSOs to run a course with the University of London on post-legislative scrutiny, which will be rolled out to all committee clerk for the new Parliament, because we just crossed elections. Also in the induction process, yesterday we concluded in the meeting and in the agenda, myself and Gilbert were there, we agreed on the need to have open Parliament citizens' view and expectations for the next Parliament. So myself and Gilbert are discussing now. One
All
is...
right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, please, I think it is my internet. You can go ahead. I thought you had finished.
Okay. Yes, I said myself and the team in Parliament, we discussed quite a number of initiatives. One is to get the UNICEF U report platform to get citizens' expectations for the new Parliament. And we were discussing also on the need to get gender mainstreaming into the conversation, considering the fact that a new gender law has been passed for 30% affirmative actions in Parliament, to give a gender face into citizens' participation in the lawmaking process. And there's this discourse about making OGP Steering Committee a formidable committee in Parliament. So all of these reforms came as a result of the OPI index that was announced last year. So it gives a new meaning, a new attention to OGP in the country, and a new attention to Parliament, thinking about to do a co-creation for Parliament alone, because now we're all embedded in a national action plan. Parliament is also looking forward to get its own action plan on OGP. So these are all reforms and change and innovation that came in as a result of the OPI index. And I feel it shares so much motivation into Parliament, knowing that there are people out there who look at what happened. And the credibility of the index is that it's happening at regional level. And PN Africa has built this niche across the African region on PMO work. And so it came in with so much respect and so much attention. I think Sami also had a chat with our Speaker of Parliament, wherein he expressed quite a lot of zest and need to continue towards it. So our look now is that the new Parliament will be able to inherit some of these statutes and push this change and reforms going forward. Thank you.
Thank you too very much. So I'd like to thank all of you, the panelists, for your time that you shared with us, the lessons, and everything you shared with us, ranging from how your parliaments have now opened a fiscal office in Parliament to engage or to be the intermediary between CSOs and Parliament from the Right Honorable Speaker Commissioning Survey to see how parliaments are being engaged or CSOs engagement with parliaments is going. And from the live radio broadcast that some of the parliaments are doing, as well as the Facebook lives that some of the CSOs are also doing to promote parliaments. We thank you all for this initiative that you shared with us. I think this would also be learned or replicated by other parliaments and other CSOs in order to promote open parliament. I now hand over to my colleague, Ben, who will continue the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, for the wonderful moderation. It's been a very insightful discussions. I've really had a lot of insights regarding the impact that OPI 2022 has so far had, some of the challenges that our panelists have shared and all of that. At this moment, we will be wrapping up. We are behind time. And so while we wrap up, we would invite Sami Obeng, who is the Executive Director for PN Africa, to give a summary of the discussions that we've had here and what the way forward looks like for open parliaments or the discussions around open parliaments and network building in Africa. But before we do that, while we invite Sami Obeng to come in, we would take another or a final Mentimeter question to answer. We would like to know from you your impression about this event. How would you assess today's event? So please do us the honor by going into the chat box. You copy the code that has been shared in the chat box, and then you click on the link. You go to the portal, and then you answer the question, how would you assess today's event? Feel free also to post in the chat box your comments or any contribution you would want to share with us all. We'll be very happy to hear from you. In the chat box, you see the passcode posted in there. You copy it, you click on the Mentimeter link you see. It will take you into the Mentimeter portal. You input the passcode and you have a question to assess today's event. We would like to hear from you, your impression about this event so that we can also improve going forward. While we look forward to welcome Mr. Sami Obeng to give us a summary of the discussions, the way forward, and a concluding remark. Sami, if you can hear me.
Thank you very much, Ben. And thank you to all of our amazing panelists who have shared some very impressive stories with us on how things have gone with their respective parliaments. This has been very inspiring for me, and of course for all of us at PN Africa. And I'm very certain that this would serve as an inspiration also to other civil society organizations and parliaments on the call. Cynthia recapped some of the exciting, interesting innovations that have come up within just a year, of launching the index. It means that parliaments have taken these things very, very seriously. So from issues around radio and television programming or media programming, issues around from media programming to issues around civil society continuous engagement with parliaments, high-level meetings and engagements, setting up parliamentary bureaus, setting up the parliament CSO network in Ghana and Sierra Leone respectively, reviving the standing or there's high-level meetings between civil society and parliament in the likes of Benin, Niger, workshops, capacity building around the subject matter. All these have been very exciting. And I'm sure that with time, additional resources to these PMOs, to the parliaments, as we have development partners in our midst, we can be able to achieve even better going into the next index. We have also learned on this call the need for further and better exchanges amongst ourselves as countries, amongst ourselves as civil society, amongst ourselves as parliament. Maria spoke about how the Africa network can continue to engage with the Latin American network. Tariq spoke about how the GP obviously provides us a very unique opportunity to co-create interventions and innovations with our respective parliament or between parliament and civil society, and how all of us as civil society, all of us as parliament, all of us as development partners can collaborate and partner to be able to achieve bigger and better things in the area of open parliament reforms. Certainly, the open parliament conversation has taken shape in Africa, the kind of conversation that needs to be supported, the kind of conversation that needs to be advanced so that we can be able to see parliaments across Africa that are transparent, that are more accountable to the citizenry, and parliaments across Africa that are encouraging citizens' participation. And so this has been very encouraging, and I think it will serve as impetus really for us to be able to move solidly into the next OPI development, working with stakeholders to recognize the achievements in this few period and to be able to see how we can consolidate our gains to ensure that we can make bigger and better impact going forward. And with these words, I would like to, on behalf of my very self and the team here at PN Africa and the network of PMOs, thank you all very, very much for making time to join us. Thank our panelists for making time to join us, and to wish you a fruitful continuation even as we move forward. Thank you so very much.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much, Sami, for the final and concluding remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you making the time to join and staying true till the end. Till we meet again next time to talk about parliaments and open parliaments. My name is Benjamin Okokwaye. We'll meet another time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.